Hi, everyone. Welcome today to an episode I'm super excited about because it touches upon something I've heard many of you talk about, and we've had many discussions on this, which is in the world of digital. How do you think about data, and how do you really draw the balance between digital personalization, which we all know is really important, with privacy? And its underlying relationship between privacy and personalization is an important one for us to get right. When it's symbiotic, when it works, it delivers fantastic customer experience. And when it doesn't, well, we won't talk about that, but obviously that's not ideal. Really, to touch upon this topic and explore the world of data, I've invited someone that I have lots of respect for and I've had a chance to speak and spend some time with, and it's Olaf Groth. Olaf, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Sanjay. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Olaf. And just for my audience, I want to let you know that Olaf is CEO of Cambrian.ai, and tell us quickly what Cambrian does.
Yeah, thanks, John. So we are an advisory think tank, meaning that we are a group of individuals that have both been professionals in the tech industry as well as academics rooted in global university environments such as Halton International Business School, UC Berkeley, and others who have come together to provide thought leadership and strategy services to corporations, private equity, venture capital, foundations around the world, as well as governments on the deep tech challenges that are arising that are causing disruption, and then how to deal with that.
That's fantastic. And just on that note, you mentioned this, but you're a professor and you teach. What's that all about?
Yeah, I'm a global professor, professor of practice at Halton International Business School, as well as at the Haas School of Business, professor of practice at the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley. And I teach courses on strategy, on innovation, on technology, and on futures or executive foresight, as they say, trying to figure out where our market's going, where technology's going, and what does it all mean for our businesses, for our communities, for our societies, for our economies.
That's fascinating. So there you have it for my audience. You know, Olaf, you're a consumer like all of us of data and digital and personalization. You're an advisor, you're a consultant, you're part of a think tank, and you're an educator. So thank you for all of those roles you play. And across those roles, I'm sure you get this asked a lot. You know, when it comes to digital transformation, using AI, using analytics, et cetera, what's sort of the top things that come to your mind if you want to share something with my audience?
Well, you know, look, it's very obvious that all of us want better services that are more tailored to who we are. We want companies to really understand us and give us the better products and richer lives, right? But that can only happen if they know a bit more about us. And so, you know, that means you have to give them some data on you. You have to let them know who you are and what you want. And yet, that means we have to disclose things about us, some of which are sensitive, and we'd rather not talk about them or show them or have us profiled. And so there's really a tightrope that both we as consumers and the companies that provide these digital services are walking as we are trying to find our way to each other without compromising privacy. Privacy is really a very critical business problem today, and we have to ensure that our future business offerings are privacy assured.
And Olaf, you're so right to comment on the fact that this is something that companies, corporations, professionals like us need to worry about, but actually it's something that a consumer needs to think about as well, because the privacy paradox at a consumer level, when I'm not in my day job as a consumer, I actually don't want to give any information out about myself, but I want the best service specific and contextualized to me. And how do you make that happen, right? It's a big, big question. So listen, let's then just jump into the topic. And really, there's two parts to it. There's the part about data, because if you don't have data as a foundation, none of this privacy and personalization comes into play. And you've written and you've talked, and I know you've consulted a lot on the topic of efficient markets and data as an asset class. Tell us a little bit about that, and let's explore the idea of data as an asset class.
Well, data is, they say, the new oil, right? It's the basic building block, the basic foundational resource for our digital economy. And if we want that additional intimacy between customers and corporations, we have to exchange data. Right? And yet we don't really know what the data that we're leaving, that we're giving, is worth. When asked, we as consumers have a certain idea as to what a certain data point, let's say my date of birth or my name, some kind of personal identifier, is worth. And that may be an expectation on a certain level. And yet the people that are trying to give us services might say, well, I don't quite agree with just how valuable you think that piece of information is. So there's a disconnect between those that create the data, that want to sell the data in exchange for services or in exchange for cash for that matter, and those that have to buy it by giving us services or giving us money. And so what we really need is a transparent market in the middle with a mechanism that enables us to really determine that value and to then agree on a price with the buyers of that data. And that really doesn't exist today. We have bilateral relationships between, either enterprise customers or consumers and these digital service providers. But again, there is really very little transparency about what data am I giving you exactly, how much of that do you really need, how sensitive is that data to me, and at what terms do I want to give you that data or sell you that data, right? Much less any sort of more open, broader market mechanism that allows you to say, hey, if I'm willing to give a piece of data, who wants it and what am I going to get in return? Which is sort of how markets should work, transparently and with low transaction costs. And that does not exist today.
So I mean, that's a fascinating thought, and I know you've done a lot of work in this area, and just thinking about efficient markets and the theory of efficient markets and applying it to data as an asset class itself. And I think you sized it up to be a pretty large market. What do you think the size is right now of data as an asset class, Olaf?
Well, yeah, the Europeans are estimating just the data in Europe to be worth about $1 trillion, so it being an asset class of about $1 trillion. Globally, we're estimating about $3 trillion. So that's a huge potential asset class that could be traded if it is, good data, clean data that's not corrupt, that can be labeled and identified and derive meaning from, and if it is privacy assured.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I mean, it's big and it's actually getting bigger. You can apply the fundamentals of efficient markets theory to the world of data as an asset class and take it forward. And I think your points about transparency, about efficiency become really important. And I think many of the lessons we've learned in other efficient markets cross-apply. But I want to take you down one of those areas, which is the area of valuation and pricing. Because I think one of the things that's different is the way I would value the privacy of my data might be different from the way you value the privacy of your data. And so how do you think about this individual contextualization on valuation of data? And then how do you run an efficient market in the context of price becoming a variable by itself across consumers?
Great question, and as we say, a wickedly complex problem, right? Because you're right that you value your privacy differently from mine. Might have a very different definition of what privacy means, and that's expressed in what I buy and how I move digitally, right? And so, so really, there is no general purpose solution for privacy, and so we have to individualize it and, like you say, contextualize it. So what we have to do is, as you roam the internet, we're going to have to give you a personal device, somewhat of an independent autonomous agent that will assess, who is following you, what is the data exhaust or the data footprint that you're leaving, and how does that comply with your very personal privacy charter, right? Based on that privacy charter, we can then make packages of data, of all the data that you leave, and value that for you, and then engage in a process where we transparently offer that to digital service providers, and they can then come back and say, well, these couple of data points here with those couple of data points over there as a package is worth X, Y, Z. And of course, as you can hear, that's already quite complicated and would have to happen very fast, right? Because nobody wants to bother figuring all this out when really all they want is the news or some kind of e-commerce transaction. And so there has to be an autonomous AI-driven, very compute-heavy process in the background that assesses the different variables at play here and constructs a price. And usually that's achieved through some kind of bidding mechanism at first and some kind of smart engine later that is based on the output from the bidding engine. So it's high-end stuff. It'll happen at some point. We're going there, but it's going to take a few years.
But I think you make a good case, right? Because the reality is each of us wants more personalization and a better consumer experience for the services we acquire from whoever. And to be able to do that, we need to be able to allow those providers to use data to personalize it. And I think your point about data becoming a large asset class, but actually growing even faster than that, to a point where we need an efficient market around it that allows you to be able to trade that and operate in that market. It needs to be efficient, it needs to be transparent, it needs to be effective. But it needs to, and I think the point you're making is you almost need a digital twin. So there's Sanjay here, and there's a digital twin of mine that actually captures the amount of data I want to share for the resulting personalization I'd like to be able to get. And by the way, my digital twin is different from Olaf, your digital twin, and that can value the data aspects of my characteristics specific to me and yours specific to you, and then that can become the unit that gets traded and then allows for this market to function. And it's pretty heavy stuff, I have to tell you, but I think you're right. We need something like this to happen for data to be available for the needs we need to put it to.
Well, look, if we want the next frontier of digital growth, we're going to have to instill trust in consumers as well as enterprises, right? And trust means giving people a bit more control over what data they're giving away versus what they're being compensated for, how all that happens, and when that happens. And I think if we can create that kind of trust, then we can have more customer intimacy and more transactions. And I think that's where eventually we'll be headed.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, I told you I'd bring you a thought leader. I brought you someone right from a think tank on the world of data and privacy and personalization and efficient markets and data as an asset class. Olaf Groth, he's an educator, he's a practitioner, he's a consultant, he's obviously a consumer like you and I. Olaf, what's a great way to reach you? I suspect you'll be on LinkedIn, so if our audience wants to connect with you, I'm sure they can reach out. Is that the best place if people wanted to say hi or pick your brain on a topic or two?
Sure, LinkedIn works definitely. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also look me up on Cambrian.ai. So that's Cambrian.ai, or on Twitter at Olaf Groth SF. Well, the handle is Olaf Groth SF.
Fantastic, Olaf. Thank you so much for spending time with us. As your last handle would indicate, you're in the Bay Area, so you're a fellow Silicon Valleyer. And I also know that you spend a lot of time in Europe, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you and your audience.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for now. See you next time.